From the 1920s to the 1960s, every detail of a star's life was controlled, their real origins erased, and new identities created. Contracts, publicists, and powerful studios buried the truth until now. Beneath Hollywood's glittering premieres and picture-perfect family portraits hid secrets that could have destroyed legends. The world saw glamorous icons, but behind closed doors, these stars were hiding family scandals so shocking. Studios spent millions to keep them silent. Today, forgotten memoirs and hidden archives finally reveal the sacrifices, heartbreak, and dramatic secrets that Hollywood's brightest names fought to keep in the dark. Merl Oberon. The world was told Merl Oberon was a white aristocrat from Tasmania. The truth? She was born in Bombay, India, the daughter of a 12-year-old Anglo-Indian girl and her British employer, a reality so explosive it could have destroyed her career overnight. From the moment she entered Hollywood, Oberon's life was a tightly woven web of secrets. Behind her on-screen glamour in Wuthering Heights, she carried the crushing burden of a concealed past. To protect her from a society gripped by racism and rigid moral codes, Merl was raised to believe her grandmother was her mother, and her real mother was her sister. The grim circumstances of her birth were erased from every script and biography. Hollywood studios seized the opportunity, fabricating a background that placed her in Tasmania, deliberately choosing a location where records had burned, making the truth impossible to trace. As Merl's fame soared, so did her fear of exposure. She underwent painful skin treatments, carefully arranged lighting, and kept even her closest family in the dark. This was not mere vanity, but survival. In an era when mixed-race ancestry spelled professional ruin, the stakes were nothing less than total erasure from the industry she loved. The emotional toll was immense. Oberon lived in constant vigilance, sacrificing her identity for the spotlight. Her tragic secret wasn't publicly confirmed until decades after her death, when researchers finally uncovered her Indian birth certificate. Merl Oberon's legacy is more than her breathtaking performances. It's a haunting reminder of the silent sacrifices demanded by Hollywood's obsession with image. Her story exposes the hidden cost of fame and challenges audiences today to rethink what lies beneath the surface of every carefully constructed legend. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth, the ultimate 1940s sex symbol, was hiding one of Hollywood's most disturbing family secrets. She suffered serious injuries from his biological father. Marketed as the fiery-haired fantasy of the 1940s, Hayworth was born Margarita Cancino, the daughter of a Spanish dancer who forced her into show business and into a life of control and trauma. From age 12, she toured seedy clubs as his dance partner, all while enduring unspeakable abuse behind closed doors. It was a truth she revealed only years later to Orson Welles, her second husband, because in that era, such a revelation would have destroyed her career. To the studios, she was too ethnic for stardom, so Columbia Pictures erased her identity. Her hairline was reshaped with painful electrolysis, her dark hair dyed red, her name whitewashed into Rita Hayworth. Even her backstory was rewritten to bury her Latina roots. The real Rita was replaced by a fantasy, engineered, sold, and idolized. But behind the sparkle of Gilda was a woman who never escaped her past. "They go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me," she famously said, a line that perfectly captured the tragic duality she lived with. She endured 5 failed marriages, including to Prince Ali Khan and Wells, and lived haunted by the scars of betrayal and loss of identity. Her life is one of the starkest examples of how the Hollywood machine didn't just manufacture stars. It erased truths, rewrote backgrounds, and buried childhood trauma under silk gowns and silver screens. If you're staying with us and uncovering every powerful story in this video, comment the letter A below to show your support for hope, healing, and a healthier future. Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson's entire childhood was built on a single seismic lie. For 37 years, Hollywood's ultimate rebel had no idea that the woman he called his sister was, in fact, his real mother, and the woman he called Mom was actually his grandmother. The truth only surfaced in 1974, when a Time magazine reporter uncovered birth records that revealed the family's elaborate deception. Decades earlier, in 1936, 18-year-old June Nicholson became pregnant out of wedlock, a scandalous situation in conservative Catholic New Jersey. To protect June from shame and ruin, her mother, Ethel May, orchestrated a secret so airtight that even Jack was fooled. Ethel raised baby Jack as her own son, while June became the older sister, often away chasing her own dreams as a showgirl. Their web of silence ran so deep that not even other relatives dared to break it. Nicholson grew up idolizing his big sister, never suspecting the truth. By the time the real story surfaced, both women were gone, leaving Jack to process his new identity alone under the world's spotlight. Despite the shock, Nicholson took it in stride, famously remarking, "It's a pretty dramatic event, but it wasn't what I'd call traumatizing. It's almost like something out of a soap opera." His cool reaction masked a darker reality. Even Hollywood legends weren't immune to the crushing stigma of unwed motherhood that haunted mid-century America. Families would rewrite their own histories just to protect their reputation. Nicholson's story remains one of the most bizarre and revealing family secrets in Hollywood history, a living reminder of how far people would go to preserve the image demanded by society, and how the echoes of those secrets can shape a star's entire life. Lon Chaney Sr. Lon Chaney Sr. rose to silent film superstardom with a hidden legacy. Both of his parents were deaf, a fact he kept fiercely guarded from Hollywood and even those closest to him. Behind every haunting transformation in The Phantom of the Opera or The Hunchback of Notre Dame was a childhood shaped by silence and secret struggle. Growing up in the late 1800s, Chaney lived in a world where disabilities were shrouded in stigma and often met with cruelty or pity. To shield his family from ridicule, he concealed his parents' deafness from the public and even from his own wife until she met them face to face. This silence wasn't just a family matter, it was a shield against an unforgiving society and a ruthless industry that could destroy careers with a single rumor. Yet this secret was the source of his artistic superpower. Raised in a home where sign language and gesture were the only way to communicate, Chaney mastered the art of conveying emotion without a single word. These skills, forged in childhood, became the foundation of his legendary performances. Every subtle glance, every twisted grimace, Chaney's entire career was a tribute to the world of expression he learned at home. But the cost of secrecy was personal. When his first wife, Clara Bow, finally learned the truth about his parents, their marriage began to unravel. Her reaction exposing just how deeply ingrained society's prejudices were. Chaney's refusal to speak openly about his family reveals not only the pressures of his time, but also the pain and isolation behind the Hollywood mask. Jean Tierney. In 1943, Tierney was pregnant when a devoted admirer broke strict quarantine to meet her at a Hollywood event. The fan, carrying rubella, unknowingly passed the virus to Tierney, changing her life forever. The result, her daughter Daria was born with severe disabilities, deaf, partially blind, and with significant developmental delays. The public never knew. Under pressure from Hollywood's ruthless image machine, Tierney and her husband, Oleg Cassini, made the agonizing decision to place Daria in an institution, a reality hidden from fans and the press for decades. Tierney was consumed by guilt and grief. Behind her dazzling on-screen smile, she fought a silent battle with depression, undergoing repeated hospitalizations and even electroshock therapy, taboo subjects at the time, fiercely concealed by the studios to protect her box office appeal. In a chilling twist, Tierney would later overhear the very fan who had infected her recounting their encounter, unaware of the devastation it had caused. Tierney stayed silent, her pain too deep to reveal. Hollywood's culture of secrecy and perfection, especially in the 1940s, left stars like Tierney with nowhere to turn. Studios intervened ruthlessly, erasing any hint of scandal or perceived weakness. In Tierney's case, the burden of keeping her daughter's fate secret nearly destroyed her. It wasn't until 1979, in her own autobiography, that Tierney finally told the world the truth. The raw honesty of her story exposed the cruel reality beneath the Hollywood dream, and inspired Agatha Christie's novel The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, though few realized its roots lay in Tierney's real-life anguish. Patty Duke. In the late 1960s, Patty Duke, already an Oscar winner and America's sweetheart, found herself pregnant and facing the one scandal that could destroy a star's career. She had no idea who the father was. Desperate to protect her wholesome image, the studio and her publicists acted fast. Patty hastily married Michael Tell, a virtual stranger, during her pregnancy. The marriage lasted a mere 13 days and was never consummated. Meanwhile, gossip columns erupted, linking her romantically to teen idol Desi Arnaz Jr. and actor John Astin. To the outside world, Patty spun a story. John Astin was the father. The couple married soon after, and John raised the boy, Sean, as his own. But behind closed doors, uncertainty loomed. Years later, Patty confessed to Sean that Desi Arnaz Jr. could be his real father. It was a confession that shattered his sense of identity and set off a quest for truth. Who do you think was really Sean Astin's biological father, John Astin, Desi Arnaz Jr., or Michael Tell? Type your answer in the comments below. Just write Astin, Arnaz, or Tell to cast your vote. Let's see who gets it right. It wasn't until the 1990s, when DNA testing became possible, that Sean Astin finally demanded answers. The results shocked everyone. His biological father was Michael Tell, the man Patty had impulsively wed for just under 2 weeks. The irony? Michael Tell and Patty Duke never even lived together, let alone acted as husband and wife. This paternity puzzle was more than a tabloid spectacle. It was a masterclass in how Hollywood studios manufactured illusions, hid inconvenient truths, and used quickie marriages to silence rumors. The emotional fallout for everyone involved was immense. Patty Duke carried the burden of secrecy for decades, while Sean Astin was forced to navigate a maze of conflicting family histories and hidden pain. Today, Sean embraces all three men, John Astin, Desi Arnaz Jr., and Michael Tell, as part of his unique story, choosing love and acceptance over scandal and resentment. Patty Duke's ordeal is a haunting reminder of how far old Hollywood would go to preserve a star's image, even at the cost of personal happiness and identity. Clara Bow. Born into chaos in Brooklyn, 1905, Clara's childhood was a storm of neglect and terror. Her own mother, gripped by mental illness, once tried to take her life. Even more devastating, Clara would later confide that she suffered abuse at the hands of her father. A trauma so severe it left scars for life. Hollywood's spin machine went into overdrive, erasing all traces of her tragic upbringing. To the public, she was the life of the party, but away from the cameras, Clara wrestled with crippling anxiety, insomnia, and emotional pain that never faded. Studio bosses enforced the double life, terrified that the truth could destroy both her career and the era's carefully maintained illusions of glamour. As the pressures mounted, her mental health crumbled. At just 28, Clara vanished from the silver screen, her career cut short by wounds Hollywood refused to acknowledge. Only decades later, as biographers dug deeper, did the world finally confront the heartbreaking truth. Behind the laughter and allure was a survivor, forced to hide unimaginable suffering for the sake of fame. Clara Bow became a roaring 1920s icon, a symbol of youthful rebellion and effortless charm. But the dazzling flapper persona was a fabrication, carefully constructed by the Hollywood studios to hide a reality almost too painful to imagine. Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr's biggest secret wasn't a crime, it was a family that never existed. For decades, the world believed the Perry Mason star was a widower who had survived unimaginable tragedy. A wife lost in a World War II plane crash, a young son claimed by leukemia, and another wife taken by cancer. None of it was true. Burr invented this heartbreaking backstory, down to names, dates, and emotional anecdotes, so that no one would ever suspect the truth behind his bachelor life. In reality, Burr was gay, a secret he fought desperately to protect in the rigid, unforgiving Hollywood of the 1950s and 60s. At a time when exposure could end a career overnight, Burr's invented tragedies served as a shield. The studios and his publicity team helped spin the narrative, ensuring the media repeated these tales of heartbreak and loss. Reporters probing into his personal life were stonewalled by Burr's now famous line, "I don't discuss that." And the world moved on. But behind this elaborate facade, a real love story unfolded, one the public never saw. Burr shared his life, quietly and faithfully, with his partner Robert Benavides. For 35 years, they built a life together on a California vineyard, their relationship known only to trusted friends. The emotional toll of living in hiding, of inventing family members just to pass as normal, was the price Burr paid for his career and his art. Why the charade? In mid-century Hollywood, social norms and studio power made authenticity dangerous. Leading men had to embody the image America wanted to see. The risk of scandal, professional ruin, and public shame was ever present. The studios, well aware of the stakes, often helped their stars create false histories, blending fiction with reality to keep up the illusion. It was only after Burr's death in 1993 that his secret unraveled. His carefully constructed phantom family was exposed as a masterpiece of self-preservation in an industry built on image and illusion. Burr's legacy is both a cautionary tale and a testament to the sacrifices made in the name of art and the human cost of Hollywood's relentless demand for perfection. Rock Hudson. The shocking truth behind Rock Hudson's perfect life was a lie built by Hollywood itself. In reality, Hudson was a gay man, but in the 1950s, that truth could have destroyed his career overnight. While millions swooned over his on-screen romance with Doris Day, Hudson was living a secret life, forced by the studio system to play a role off-screen as much as on. To silence rumors and stop the scandal magazine Confidential from outing him, Hollywood went into crisis mode. Hudson's agent staged a marriage with his own secretary, Phyllis Gates, making headlines and restoring Hudson's all-American image. The union was nothing but a cover, lasting just 3 years until the gossip faded. Behind closed doors, Hudson reclaimed moments of freedom, hosting legendary private parties known only to a trusted circle, but to the public he was always the unattached heartthrob, the dream bachelor. Hollywood's power was absolute. The studios enforced strict morality codes, shaping not just films but the lives of their stars. For Hudson, every genuine relationship was hidden, every magazine interview a performance. Friends like Elizabeth Taylor kept his truth safe, while journalists, either complicit or afraid of lawsuits, kept the secret until the very end. The mask finally slipped in 1985 when Hudson's battle with AIDS forced his story into the headlines, shattering the illusion Hollywood had spent decades building. Suddenly, the public was forced to confront the hidden pain behind the glamour, and Hudson's death became a turning point, exposing the cost of living a double life in a ruthless industry. Spencer Tracy. For over 2 decades, Spencer Tracy lived a double life, officially a devoted Catholic husband and philanthropist, but secretly the lifelong companion of Katharine Hepburn. From the outside, Tracy embodied moral integrity, winning Oscars for roles like Boys Town and serving as a symbol of classic American values. Studio publicity painted him as a model husband to Louise Treadwell, with whom he shared a public dedication to charity and family. But inside, Tracy battled private demons. His marriage fractured after their firstborn son, John, was born deaf in 1924. Consumed by guilt, Tracy irrationally believed his son's condition was punishment for his own failings. This relentless self-blame drove him into cycles of alcoholism and depression, pains carefully hidden behind Hollywood's polished facade. By the late 1930s, Tracy and Louise lived apart, though divorce was out of the question. His Catholic faith and the intense pressure of Hollywood's moral standards kept them tied together on paper. Then in 1941, Tracy found love and solace with Katharine Hepburn. Their passionate relationship lasted 26 years, but was forced into secrecy. Tracy refused to divorce Louise, and Hepburn accepted her role in the shadows, living a separate life and never demanding public recognition. For decades, MGM's publicity machine worked overtime to shield this unconventional arrangement from public view. Fan magazines repeated the myth: Tracy, the upright family man; Hepburn, just a loyal friend. Hollywood's unwritten rules, guided by religious tradition and studio control, demanded the truth stay buried. Even as those close to the couple understood the reality, audiences were kept in the dark until after Tracy's death in 1967, when Hepburn at last broke her silence, speaking of a love that survived behind locked doors. Joan Crawford. Christina Crawford's 1978 memoir, Mommy Dearest, pulled back the velvet curtain on Joan's home life, describing not a loving matriarch, but a woman haunted by rage, perfectionism, and control. The world was stunned as Christina alleged years of cruelty, vicious beatings, terrifying punishments, and psychological torment summed up in the infamous no-wire hangers outburst that became a pop culture legend. The contradictions couldn't be starker. The star America worshipped for her poise and discipline was, behind closed doors, allegedly consumed by alcoholism and fits of violence. Yet the scandal ran even deeper. Decades after Joan's peak, it emerged that her youngest children had been adopted through Georgia Tann's Tennessee Children's Home Society, a front for one of America's most notorious baby trafficking operations. While there's no evidence Crawford knew the children's origins, the revelation cast a long shadow on her supposed fairy tale adoptions, raising new questions about her drive for a perfect family. Hollywood studios, desperate to protect their icons, aggressively managed Crawford's image, burying whispers and glossing over rumors. But Mommy Dearest made the private horrors public. Even Crawford's surviving daughters denied the abuse, further deepening the mystery and sparking debates about memory, trauma, and the price of fame. Do you believe Christina Crawford's shocking claims about Joan Crawford were true? Type yes if you believe Christina's memoir revealed the real Joan, or no if you think the truth is still up for debate. Bing Crosby. In films like Going My Way, Crosby was the embodiment of gentle fatherhood, a trusted priest, a guiding hand. But according to his eldest son, Gary Crosby's explosive 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, the reality was starkly different. Their beloved father was, in Gary's words, a tyrant at home. He described a childhood ruled by fear, where affection was replaced by weekly weigh-ins, emotional coldness, and brutal punishments. The worst of these came in the form of belt lashings that at times drew blood. Gary's vivid account accused Crosby of being controlling, aloof, and obsessed with discipline to the point of cruelty. Two of Gary's brothers, Dennis and Lindsay, later supported parts of the memoir. One of them, Lindsay, would eventually die by suicide, adding a tragic exclamation mark to the family's dark history. Meanwhile, their brother Philip dismissed Gary's claims as exaggeration, and Crosby's second family publicly denied them all, calling Bing a loving and devoted father. But that contradiction, that chilling divide between America's idealized Christmas crooner and the man his children came to fear, has never fully faded. Hollywood, in the mid-20th century, was a fortress of image control. Studios tightly curated their stars' reputations, and any private scandals, especially those involving family dysfunction, were buried deep behind PR spin and fan magazine fluff. At the height of Crosby's fame, no one dared challenge the illusion of the gentle patriarch. Even as Gary's revelations came to light 6 years after Bing's death, fans resisted. How could such cruelty coexist with such charm? Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, Hollywood's beloved little tramp, harbored a dark secret behind the smile. At age 35, he secretly married a 16-year-old girl to avoid jail time. In 1924, rising starlet Lita Grey was cast in The Gold Rush, but when she became pregnant, the silent film icon panicked. Under California law, his relationship with her wasn't just scandalous, it was criminal. Rather than face charges, Chaplin arranged a rushed, hush-hush wedding across the border in Mexico. But the union wasn't built on love. According to Gray's explosive divorce filings years later, Chaplin had initially pressured her to terminate the pregnancy illegally. When she refused, marriage became the only escape plan. They had 2 sons in quick succession, but their home life was a far cry from cinematic charm. Chaplin's alleged infidelity, emotional cruelty, and controlling behavior tore the relationship apart. In 1927, Gray filed a bombshell 50-page divorce complaint, exposing humiliating private details that made front-page news and shook Hollywood's elite. But the studio system moved fast. Publicists scrambled to spin the story as a misunderstood romance. Chaplin's age and power were softened in the press. The narrative was reshaped to protect his image, not the girl who had been thrust into adulthood under immense pressure. Behind the scenes, this wasn't a one-off. Chaplin's troubling pattern of pursuing very young women spanned decades, but was whitewashed in biographies and buried in studio-approved histories. In a modern context, his actions would trigger outrage, not gossip. Chaplin's cinematic legacy is monumental, but so too is the silent cost of protecting a star at all costs. Lita Grey's story remains one of Hollywood's most disturbing family secrets, a tale of power, silence, and how far the industry once went to shield its kings. She married her former stepson, and it wasn't just a rumor, it was the truth that Hollywood spent a decade trying to bury. Gloria Grahame. Gloria Grahame, the seductive screen siren of film noir, known for The Big Heat and her Oscar-winning role in The Bad and the Beautiful, carried a family secret so explosive it ultimately destroyed her career. In 1951, while married to director Nicholas Ray, Gloria's already crumbling marriage detonated overnight. According to Ray himself, he returned home unexpectedly one evening and walked in on a scene that shattered him. His wife was found to have had an inappropriate relationship with her husband's stepchild when he was a minor. The fallout was immediate. Ray quietly separated from her, and by 1952 they divorced, officially citing only irreconcilable differences. The real story? Silenced, sanitized. Studios feared the damage such a revelation could do, not just to Grahame, but to Hollywood's carefully managed image of glamour and control. In an era where public morality ruled the press, the truth was buried under non-disclosure agreements and ironclad publicity management. But the story didn't end there. It took an even more bizarre turn. Years later, after other failed marriages, Gloria reconnected with Tony Ray, now an adult. In 1960, the two secretly married in Tijuana. She was 37, he was 23. Not only had she once been his stepmother, but tabloids would later discover that their relationship had roots dating back to his adolescence. For 2 years, the marriage stayed under wraps. But in 1962, a bitter custody battle with another ex-husband blew everything open. When the press learned that Grahame's fourth husband was her former stepson, the public recoiled, and Hollywood turned its back for good. Studios that once shielded her now blacklisted her. Her name disappeared from A-list productions. With nowhere left to go, Grahame turned to low-budget films, television, and stage roles in the UK, clinging to her craft while her reputation crumbled under the weight of one forbidden love. Clark Gable and Loretta Young. In 1935, at the peak of their fame, Clark Gable and Loretta Young's brief affair during the Call of the Wild led to an unplanned pregnancy. For a devout Catholic like Young and a married superstar like Gable, public exposure meant professional ruin. In an era when a single scandal could end a woman's career, Young vanished from Hollywood, giving birth to her daughter Judy, in secrecy. Desperate to preserve her reputation and avoid the era's harsh judgment of unwed mothers, Loretta orchestrated a daring deception. Months after Judy's birth, she staged an adoption, publicly presenting Judy as her adopted daughter, never revealing the truth, not even to Judy herself. Gable, for his part, never acknowledged his child and continued his life as Hollywood's golden icon. Judy Lewis grew up surrounded by whispers and speculation, even noticing her own striking resemblance to Gable. When she confronted her mother, Loretta indignantly denied the rumors, compounding Judy's confusion and pain. Meanwhile, Hollywood's powerful studio system and a complicit press worked relentlessly to keep the truth buried, fearing the fallout for two of their biggest stars. The emotional scars ran deep. Judy struggled with feelings of abandonment and identity, while Young lived in constant fear of her secret being exposed. The truth finally surfaced years later, first as tabloid hints in the 1950s, then in 1994 when Judy published her memoir, Uncommon Knowledge. In it, she described the heartbreak of confronting her mother and Loretta's late-life confession that Judy was indeed her biological daughter. This story is more than a hidden romance. It's a testament to the brutal pressures of old Hollywood, the power of image, and the lifelong consequences of secrets kept for the sake of fame. The Gable Young cover-up exposes the human cost behind Hollywood's glittering facade, reminding modern audiences that even the brightest stars carry shadows no spotlight can erase. Ingrid Bergman. The secret Hollywood didn't want you to know. Ingrid Bergman, America's cinematic symbol of innocence, was cast into exile for daring to follow her heart. At the height of her fame in the 1940s, Bergman was the living embodiment of virtue. praised for her roles in The Bells of St. Mary's and Casablanca. Audiences believed she was as pure off-screen as on, a beacon of morality in a city built on illusion. But behind closed doors, a forbidden love was about to shatter everything. In 1949, while still married, Bergman traveled to Italy and began a passionate affair with director Roberto Rossellini. When she became pregnant, the revelation stunned the world. Overnight, Hollywood's golden girl became public enemy number one, a powerful influence for evil, thundered Senator Edwin C. Johnson from the U.S. Senate floor. Churches demanded boycotts. Fan mail turned venomous. The studio system, fearing for its wholesome brand, did nothing to protect her. The punishment was swift. Bergman was shunned, blacklisted, and forced into exile from Hollywood for 7 long years. Meanwhile, male stars who committed similar transgressions continued working with impunity, exposing the brutal double standard at the heart of the industry. Bergman rebuilt her life in Europe, marrying Rossellini and raising 3 children, one of whom, Isabella Rossellini, would herself become a celebrated actress. But the scars of public humiliation ran deep. She was condemned not for breaking the law, but for defying the manufactured image crafted by studios and upheld by society's rigid moral codes. Her eventual return in Anastasia marked a rare Hollywood redemption. The ovation she received at the 1959 Oscars showed that the industry was finally ready to forgive, but the lesson remained. In Hollywood, the real crime was exposing the lie behind the legend. Bergman's story is a stark reminder of the heavy price stars paid for living authentically in a world that demanded perfection at any cost. Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds, with his signature smirk and action star aura, became one of the very definition of 70s masculinity. However then, since haunted by the creeping signs of aging and a receding hairline, Reynolds took a drastic step in 1978, one of the earliest hair transplant procedures. Painful and primitive by today's standards, the treatment left lasting scars both physically and emotionally. As the years passed, his focus shifted upward. By the mid-1980s, he had gone under the knife multiple times for facial procedures. A facelift in 1984 was followed by a more extensive one in 1988. The goal? To freeze time. But as many would later say, time always finds a way to show through. Unlike many in the industry, Reynolds didn't hide his cosmetic choices. In fact, he joked about them publicly on The Tonight Show in 1990. But behind the humor was a man increasingly at odds with his reflection. As the 90s progressed, his once iconic face began to bear the marks of too much intervention, taut skin, altered contours, and a look that no longer matched the legend. By the time he released his memoir in 2015, Reynolds was brutally honest. Much of it, he admitted, was a mistake, fueled by fear, by insecurity, and by the relentless pressure to remain Hollywood's leading man. Robert Redford. For decades, Redford seemed immune to the march of time, his face retaining the very essence of the American dream. Yet, as the years went by, whispers began to circulate. How did he remain so untouched by age? Unlike other stars who rushed to deny any help from cosmetic science, Redford never gave a straight answer. When confronted about his seemingly ageless appearance in a 2007 interview, he offered only this: "I think a person has a right to do whatever they want to do. I don't have any issues with it one way or the other." The ambiguity only deepened the mystery. Behind the scenes, experts believe Redford's youthful look was no accident. Beginning in the mid-1980s, as age started to show, he reportedly opted for discreet enhancements, targeting areas like his lower eyelids, which once threatened to dull his piercing gaze. Those who worked with him, like veteran makeup artist Leonard Engelman, recall just how meticulous Redford was about his on-screen image. He knew exactly how to keep the camera on his side, but Redford's strategy was anything but typical. Rather than drastic, headline-grabbing changes, he chose subtle, gradual tweaks. By the 1990s, as he reinvented himself behind the camera, experts point to a refined lower facelift, a procedure designed to firm his jawline without erasing his unique expressions. Dermatologists who studied his evolution say Redford's real secret was consistency. Small, regular touch-ups that let him age gracefully, keeping the wow factor without tipping into artificial territory. As he stepped back from the spotlight, Redford allowed more natural signs of aging to emerge. By the time he appeared in films like The Old Man and the Gun, critics celebrated his willingness to finally embrace the wisdom and character of his years. Today, Redford's approach is hailed as the gold standard for Hollywood men. Enhancement that never reveals itself, change that never overshadows character, and a face that tells a story, one wrinkle at a time. Cary Grant. Born Archibald Leach, his Hollywood makeover in the early 1930s started with a major dental overhaul. Studio records from 1932 reveal he had extensive dental work done to perfect the dazzling smile that would become one of his trademarks. Even as he aged, Grant managed to hold on to leading man status, often cast opposite much younger actresses well into the 1950s. By 1957, seeking to refresh his appearance without changing his natural look, he reportedly underwent a discreet upper eyelid lift to reduce the tired appearance caused by drooping lids. Director Alfred Hitchcock, who directed Grant in multiple films, subtly acknowledged these changes by noting how the actor looked renewed between projects. Still, Hitchcock, like many in the industry, avoided openly discussing male cosmetic work, maintaining Hollywood's long-standing silence on the topic. Grant's enhancements were executed with such finesse that they preserved his iconic expressions and didn't draw attention. To the public, his youthful appearance seemed to be the result of clean living and enviable genetics, but those close to him knew better. His longtime friend Katharine Hepburn once compared his maintenance to caring for a luxury car. It wasn't obvious, but it was certainly intentional. One plastic surgeon praises Grant's understated approach, noting that he set the gold standard for subtle male cosmetic procedures. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching from? Comment below. I love seeing where all our classic film fans are tuning in. Robert Mitchum. He was the face of gritty film noir, brooding, blunt and brutally captivating. When Mitchum landed in Hollywood during the 1940s, his chiseled but uneven features, especially a nose that many casting agents called too rough, threatened his leading man potential. But in 1947, he made a quiet but pivotal decision, a subtle rhinoplasty that refined his profile just enough, without erasing his identity. His doctor, Dr. Ronald Curran, called it a correction, not a reinvention. Instead of chasing artificial youth, he focused on preservation. From 1968 to 1975, Mitchum underwent discreet procedures to maintain his strong jawline, never opting for the overly tight, obviously done Hollywood face. His approach was understated, strategic, and above all masculine. Unlike many stars chasing youth at all costs, Mitchum embraced his evolving look. His famously heavy eyelids, once thought to be a flaw, became a signature part of his screen presence. And when others urged him to get an eyelid lift in the 1950s, Mitchum flat out refused. Only after his passing did the truth behind his near-ageless look emerge. What was once dismissed as genetics turned out to be quiet, calculated maintenance. In doing so, Mitchum rewrote the rulebook for male stars navigating aging in the spotlight. After suffering a serious jaw injury during a stunt on Deliverance in the mid-1970s, Reynolds underwent corrective jaw surgery, not just to heal, but to maintain the flawless face millions adored. That operation marked the beginning of a long and increasingly visible journey through cosmetic enhancement. You won't believe who's at number 8, a classic Hollywood icon whose hidden cosmetic surgery will change everything you thought about male stars. Don't miss it. Keep watching. Clark Gable. When Gable first stepped into Hollywood in the late 1920s, executives at MGM saw star potential, but only after fixing what they believed were glaring flaws. His ears noticeably stuck out, and his teeth were in such poor shape from childhood infections that they became a problem on camera. By 1932, MGM arranged for Gable to undergo otoplasty, or ear-pinning surgery, performed without general anesthesia. It was a brutal, backroom transformation, meant to sculpt him into the ideal leading man. The pain didn't stop there. Due to a severe gum infection, nearly all of his natural teeth were removed and replaced with dentures, giving him the million-dollar smile that would later win over millions. These dramatic changes were never acknowledged publicly. Studio contracts at the time forbade any mention of cosmetic surgery. But behind the scenes, Gable's transformation became the gold standard. a subtle yet powerful method of sculpting masculinity for the silver screen. As plastic surgeon Dr. Anthony Griffin later explained, Gable's case became a model for enhancing masculine features while avoiding an artificial appearance. His makeover wasn't just about vanity, it was Hollywood engineering a new male ideal. Kirk Douglas. In fact, Douglas was one of the earliest male celebrities to embrace cosmetic surgery as a serious tool for staying relevant in a youth-obsessed industry. He reportedly began his transformation in the mid-1970s, around the age of 60. What started with a discreet facelift to tighten his jawline and neck would later evolve into a full-fledged journey of surgical reinvention. Over the next few decades, Douglas quietly underwent multiple facelifts, brow lifts, and eyelid surgeries, each tweak subtly altering the man fans thought they knew. Unlike most in Hollywood who deny or dodge, Douglas spoke plainly. In a rare 1988 interview, he shrugged off the stigma, saying, "Everyone does it. I'm just more honest about it than most." That honesty, while refreshing, also made the transformations all the more noticeable, especially in his final years, when the stretched and windswept look became unmistakable. His son, Michael Douglas, later confirmed that Kirk had always been willing to use whatever tools were available to preserve his screen presence. And as surgical techniques advanced, so did Kirk's procedures, though not always with seamless results. However, while Douglas's early surgeries were subtle and well executed, his later enhancements showed the wear of time and the limits of plastic perfection. But in doing so, Kirk Douglas became a kind of blueprint for the modern Hollywood male, defiant of time, unapologetic about vanity, and a pioneer in normalizing male cosmetic surgery long before it became a trend. Dean Martin. Born Dino Crocetti, Martin's early look featured a noticeably larger nose until it mysteriously changed around 1953, just as his stardom with Jerry Lewis was skyrocketing. A discreet rhinoplasty refined his profile, making his on-screen presence even more magnetic, without completely erasing his rugged appeal. Though Martin never admitted to going under the knife, whispers swirled for decades. It wasn't until 1996 that his longtime makeup artist broke the silence, confirming that Martin had indeed undergone subtle but smart cosmetic work. And that was only the beginning. As he stepped into his 50s during the late 1960s and early 70s, Martin quietly opted for more enhancements, a lower facelift, tightened jawline, and eyelid work to combat on-camera heaviness. The procedures were meant to preserve his signature look while still fitting the Hollywood mold. Ironically, the man who made nonchalance look easy was caught in a high-stakes balancing act, appear ageless without looking artificial, and even fellow Rat Pack icon Sammy Davis Jr. couldn't resist joking about Martin's touch-ups, proving that the changes were an open secret in celebrity circles. Though far from extreme, Martin's tweaks revealed the limits of mid-century cosmetic surgery, especially around the eyes, where the signs of work couldn't always stay hidden. According to plastic surgery expert Dr. Paul Nassif, Martin's transformation wasn't just personal, it signaled a turning point in how male stars would use plastic surgery to chase the fountain of youth. Sylvester Stallone. Stallone's journey with cosmetic enhancement didn't begin as a vanity project. It began with trauma. Born with partial facial paralysis that left his mouth and lower face asymmetrical, Stallone's early features were marked by a natural droop. But a brutal accident while filming Death Race 2000 in 1975 would amplify those issues, requiring surgical intervention. By the early 80s, Stallone wasn't just an actor, he was a symbol of masculinity, and as his fame skyrocketed with Rocky and Rambo, his appearance began shifting with it. Around 1984, fans noticed subtle but significant changes. A tighter jawline, a revised hairline, and a sharper overall look. Compare his face in Rocky III, 1982, to Rocky IV, 1985. The difference is undeniable, and unlike many of his peers who hid behind vague denials, Stallone occasionally leaned into the truth. In a 1992 Vanity Fair interview, he casually confessed, "I have had cosmetic surgery. I felt like a car that needed a tune-up." Years later, he doubled down, telling People magazine in 2008, "I admit to it. Why not? At my age, doing action movies, you need to look good." But Stallone's transformation wasn't just about looking good, it was about survival. Hollywood doesn't always make room for aging action stars. And yet, in The Expendables, 2010, Stallone, then in his mid-60s, looked chiseled, taut, and camera-ready. Every frame screamed resilience, but also revealed the quiet cost of maintaining a near-ageless exterior. By 2019, while promoting Rambo: Last Blood at age 73, Stallone's face told a story of decades spent fighting gravity and winning for the most part. Though some critics say his look has crossed into the uncanny, others admire his honesty. As Stallone himself said, "We all have to fight the battle of aging. Some do it more aggressively than others." Burt Lancaster. Lancaster was one of the earliest male stars to quietly embrace plastic surgery in the golden age of Hollywood. His journey began in 1947 with a daring decision: otoplasty, or ear pinning, a procedure meant to tame his slightly prominent ears. An insecurity magnified by studio executives obsessed with flawless profiles. But Lancaster didn't stop there. In the early 1950s, he underwent a dramatic dental transformation, swapping his naturally uneven teeth for porcelain veneers that delivered the radiant, magnetic smile fans still remember today. Driven by his acrobatic roots, Lancaster treated his body like a work of art, constantly refined, never neglected. When time threatened to dull his intensity, he turned to innovation. By 1967, he underwent an early endoscopic brow lift, a cutting-edge solution for drooping brows and deepening forehead lines. It was a bold move, years ahead of its time, designed to keep his gaze razor-sharp for every close-up. As the decades passed, Lancaster stayed at the forefront of cosmetic breakthroughs. In the mid-1970s, he opted for a thread lift, an advanced procedure that promised rejuvenation without the long recovery of traditional surgery. While others balked at Hollywood's beauty demands, Lancaster faced them head-on. In his own words, "This business is about illusion." His commitment to subtle, natural-looking enhancements became legendary. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise may just be the most unaging face in Hollywood, and that's precisely what keeps fans and experts buzzing with speculation. While Cruise insists his youthful looks are thanks to good genes and clean living, his evolving appearance over the decades tells a far more intriguing story. In the early years, Cruise's smile was far from perfect, crooked, uneven, and noticeably stained. But by the time Top Gun hit theaters in 1986, his grin had transformed dramatically. Experts point to porcelain veneers as the likely reason behind that megawatt camera-ready smile. But it wasn't just his teeth that changed. Keen-eyed observers noticed that his nose appeared slightly slimmer and more refined as the years went on, subtle enough to fly under the radar, yet precise enough to spark talk of a carefully executed rhinoplasty. As Cruise transitioned into his 40s and beyond, his age seemed frozen in time. By the 2010s, his face looked fuller, smoother, and suspiciously untouched by time. Dermatologists, like Dr. Patricia Wexler, have speculated that this fountain of youth effect could be the result of non-invasive treatments like Botox and dermal fillers, methods that enhance volume and erase fine lines without the telltale signs of surgery. Still, Cruise remains tight-lipped, repeatedly denying any cosmetic help. But in an industry where aging is often airbrushed away, especially for women, Cruise's pristine appearance and his refusal to acknowledge any help exposes a rarely discussed truth, the double standard of male beauty in Hollywood. You'll never believe who this is. Who is this man? You might think you're looking at the ultimate face of American masculinity, the silver screen's most rugged icon. But behind the tough guy image lies one of Hollywood's most quietly engineered transformations. His rise began in the late 1940s, right alongside the golden age of westerns. But as the spotlight intensified, so did the pressure to preserve perfection. By 1948, his receding hairline became the first red flag, and so began one of Tinseltown's earliest experiments with hair transplants. The method was crude by today's standards, but the result, a thicker, camera-ready crown that didn't just hide age, it rewrote it. Fast forward to the 1960s, and time had started to take its toll. Deep creases began to crowd his legendary squint, the one fans couldn't get enough of. But when those lines started impairing his vision, the actor turned to a subtle eyelid surgery in 1964. It wasn't about vanity, it was about survival in a cutthroat industry that devours its aging heroes. Behind the scenes, makeup master Dick Smith worked tirelessly to uphold the illusion. He later revealed that the actor's appeal wasn't just talent, it was his carefully preserved image of rugged strength. And it didn't stop there. By the end of the decade, the aging process called for more. A discreet neck and lower facelift smoothed away sagging while enhancing that iron jawline we all knew and feared on screen. It was strategic, it was smart, and it allowed him to dominate action roles well into his 60s. Think you know who this is? Drop the name in the comments and prepare to be shocked by the reveal. Al Pacino. In his early years, Pacino allowed the years to mark him naturally. His aging in Scarface, 1983, and Sea of Love, 1989, was visible, authentic, unfiltered. But by the early 1990s, something changed. Subtle, almost imperceptible enhancements began surfacing. The receding hairline of the 80s, suddenly fuller in Scent of a Woman, 1992. According to hair restoration expert Dr. Robert Bernstein, who never treated Pacino but studied his progression, this was likely the result of early hair transplant techniques that created a camera-friendly, though slightly artificial, look up close. By the early 2000s, the changes were no longer just subtle. In films like Insomnia, 2002, sharp-eyed viewers noticed his jawline and neck looking smoother, tighter, signs of conservative facelift procedures typical for that era. And while longtime makeup artist Maurice Stein has avoided confirming specifics, he's hinted that Pacino approached his appearance like a true strategist, enhancing just enough to retain the intensity that defined his career, without erasing what made him unique. What makes Pacino's transformation particularly compelling is how it paralleled his evolving screen identity. As he moved from volatile anti-heroes to commanding patriarchs, his physical presentation seemed curated to match. This wasn't about looking young, it was about preserving power. By the time he stepped into The Irishman, 2019, even before the digital de-aging effects were added, fans could sense more work had been done, likely eyelid surgery, additional hair procedures, and skin maintenance that gave him a stylized yet unmistakably Pacino presence. Unlike others who surrender to aging or drastically reinvent themselves, Pacino walked a different path. He froze his image in time, not to deceive, but to continue performing at full intensity. John Travolta. Travolta's first surgical step was less vanity than survival. By his mid-20s, the breakout star of Saturday Night Fever was already losing hair, a crisis for a studio-backed heartthrob. Around 1980, insiders say he underwent an early punch graft transplant, an uncomfortable, visible procedure that bought him time just as his career stalled through the 80s. Fast forward to Pulp Fiction, 1994. Instead of hiding every flaw, Travolta leaned into a softer waistline and thinning hair. The gamble worked. Audiences saw a mature Vincent Vega, not yesterday's teen idol. But the respite was brief. Entering his 50s, Travolta doubled down on high-tech upgrades. Compare Swordfish, 2001, with Hairspray, 2007, a crisper jaw, smoother cheeks, and a surprisingly dense hairline hint at facelifts paired with advanced transplants. By 2010, the actor's look had become a masterclass in cosmetic versatility. Paparazzi might capture a naturally receding crown on Tuesday, while a red carpet appearance on Friday showcased a flawless hairpiece or even discreet scalp tattooing, observes plastic surgery commentator Dr. Paul Nassif. What's interesting about Travolta's case is how it demonstrates the full range of male cosmetic options, from scalp surgery to state-of-the-art hair systems. The switch-up grew even bolder after 2015, when side-by-side photos of Travolta, with and without, circulated online, turning his chameleon approach into a talking point. Rather than retreat, he occasionally posted selfies that embraced a clean-shaven scalp and natural aging lines, proof that control, not perfection, is the new currency. Beauty industry analyst Cary Grant summed it up in 2019. Travolta embodies the modern tightrope male star's walk, neither denying enhancement nor confessing every detail. In the ultra-sharp age of 4K screens and social media zoom-ins, His shape-shifting face stands as one of Hollywood's most unbelievable before and after stories, and a blueprint for how today's leading men manage the glare without ever admitting the full cost. Did you ever suspect that Hollywood's leading men had cosmetic surgery? Yes or no? Comment yes if you guessed it, or no if these transformations surprised you. Bruce Jenner. Few celebrity transformations have captivated Hollywood quite like Bruce Jenner's. Long before the world knew Caitlyn, Jenner's changing face became the subject of whispers, speculation, and headlines, especially in the age of reality TV. The journey began back in the 1980s when Jenner quietly underwent a partial facelift, hoping to fight back against time. But things soon took a turn. In the mid-1990s, a misjudged nose job left him with results that even he would later call out as disastrous. A bold confession aired years later on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. At a time when male stars hid their trips to the surgeon's office, Jenner's honesty was shocking. By 2009, he didn't just admit to more corrective surgery, he let the cameras roll, pulling back the curtain on an industry-wide secret. Each procedure, from facelifts to a tracheal shave in 2014, fueled endless rumors and relentless tabloid theories. Yet these changes were driven by Jenner's relentless pursuit of self-improvement as Bruce, not by any public plans for transition. What made Jenner's story truly groundbreaking wasn't just the surgeries themselves, it was the courage to break Hollywood's silence. By making his cosmetic journey so public, Jenner helped destroy the stigma for men considering plastic surgery, paving the way for a new era of honesty among male celebrities. Barry Manilow. Once celebrated for his soulful performances and unmistakable voice, his physical transformation has now become nearly as talked about as his chart-topping hits. By the time he entered his 40s in the mid-1980s, subtle changes began surfacing. His jawline grew sharper. His nose appeared more sculpted, quiet enhancements that still preserved the essence of his recognizable image. But as the years rolled on, so did the changes. By the 1990s, fans couldn't help but notice a tighter brow, a smoother complexion, and an almost ageless appearance. The whispers grew louder in the 2000s and 2010s as his evolving look became a hot topic in entertainment news. Rumors of multiple facelifts and delicate eyelid refinements began to dominate discussions, especially as the contrast between his earlier and current photos grew more dramatic. Manilow has occasionally laughed off questions about his appearance, tossing out vague acknowledgements without diving into specifics. But his silence speaks volumes. Unlike many Hollywood actors chasing youth for the big screen, Manilow's motive was different. He wasn't chasing fame. He was preserving the persona his fans had grown up with. What makes Barry Manilow's transformation truly shocking is not just the physical change, but how it mirrors a larger cultural shift, one where male cosmetic procedures moved from taboo to trending. Today, his new face isn't a scandal, it's a symbol of the high price of staying timeless in an industry obsessed with youth. Kenny Rogers. Few celebrity transformations have stirred as much conversation and controversy as Kenny Rogers' dramatic plastic surgery journey. Once celebrated for his rugged charm, the country music icon stunned fans when he chose to confront aging head-on, with a series of cosmetic procedures starting in the early 1990s. As he entered his 50s, Rogers sought to fight the signs of time, beginning with surgery to lift his hooded eyes. Unlike many stars who dodge questions, Kenny openly confessed to his enhancements. In a revealing 2006 interview, he didn't hold back. "I did have a lot of plastic surgery. I had my eyes done and a facelift," he admitted, calling the early results great. But the quest for youth didn't stop there. By the late 2000s, further surgeries left him with a noticeably tighter, almost frozen expression, a change he would later regret. In 2012, he shared the harsh truth, "It makes me look like I'm startled all the time." Kenny Rogers' openness shattered Hollywood's silence around male cosmetic surgery, making him a cautionary tale for anyone tempted by the promise of perfection. His own memoir carried a sober warning: not every procedure ends as planned. The key, he urged, is to accept what you see in the mirror and keep moving forward, no matter the outcome. Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke's face became a battlefield, and the scars tell a story that Hollywood can't ignore. In the 1980s, he was the ultimate heartthrob, smoldering, rebellious, and effortlessly magnetic in films like Dinah and 9½ Weeks. But between 1991 and 1994, the former matinee idol suffered brutal facial injuries, a shattered nose, fractured cheekbones, and more. Each blow forced him further down a path of reconstructive surgeries. The damage was real, and so were the consequences. By the late 90s, aging and the toll of past trauma drove Rourke to seek even more cosmetic procedures, including a facelift. But in his own words, he chose the wrong surgeon. Instead of restoration, the surgeries added more distortion. By the time Sin City 2005 and The Wrestler 2008 hit screens, Mickey Rourke was almost unrecognizable. His rugged, altered face became part of his brand, a haunting testament to the price of pain and reinvention. Unlike many in Hollywood, Rourke didn't hide, he owned it. "My face tells a story," he once said. "Not always a pretty one, but it's honest." His journey is a cautionary tale of fame, physical endurance, and the irreversible impact of going too far in the fight to rebuild what was lost. Behind Hollywood's glittering facade lay lives woven from heartbreak and hidden truths. From Merl Oberon denying her own mother to Rock Hudson's forced marriage and Loretta Young's secret child, these 20 revelations prove that the Golden Age's brightest stars carried burdens as heavy as their fame was dazzling. Knowing the pain they masked only deepens our respect for the art they left us. If this peek behind the curtain moved you, smash that like, hit subscribe iconic inside, and ring the bell for more untold tales of classic cinema. Tell us in the comments, which secret stunned you most, and whose story should we uncover next?